I'm Rosanne Ullman, reading a series I wrote for Modern Salon called Always Modern. I wrote this 25 years ago at the 75th anniversary of the magazine, and we are now in 2024, the 100th anniversary of the magazine. This chapter, or this article, is about the 1940s. Always Modern, a decade of transition takes salons through wartime. When the Japanese attacked Hawaii's Pearl Harbor in December 1941, the United States entered fully what by that time was recognized as a Second World War. There isn't much to like about a war, but there is this: full employment. With men and women working both in and out of the military, earnings increased and spending became freer. Salons quickly reaped the rewards. Women had money to spend on services and motivation to look good. For one thing, many were now working gals, taking over the jobs and salaries that the soldiers left behind. Also, there was a persistent message to keep up morale. Women were advised to look well-groomed for the men fighting on battlefields far away. Send photos of yourself to your boyfriend, women were instructed. Have a pretty smile. The salon industry tapped into this message and chose as its wartime slogan, "Be the woman behind the man behind the gun." So throughout the duration of the war, salon owners experienced an odd situation that could be brought about only by wartime: more clients than they could handle, along with shortages of both supplies and employees. To ensure materials would remain in adequate supply for the manufacture of weapons and other war necessities, the government set quotas on many commodities. Among these were metals, which no longer could be used to manufacture hairpins, perm pads, tools, chrome furniture, equipment, and other salon essentials; shellac, used in hair lacquer and replaced with ingredients that gave salon professionals their first widespread experience with dermatitis; and ethyl alcohol, which limited the supply of astringents, nail polish, polish remover, and peroxide. Shampoo and soap grew increasingly hard to come by, and rubber was banned. You couldn't buy a sturdy comb until the war was over. The toughest days came late in the war when hair dryers, perm machines, and other equipment that had served beyond its years began to break down. There were few parts available to fix them and fewer new models to replace them. More threatening to the industry than the commodity shortage was the employee shortage. Jobs were so plentiful that workers had their choice of careers, many of which paid higher wages than hairdressing. Even the more reputable beauty schools had anemic enrollments, so the burden of recruiting students fell to the local salons. Some state governments tried to help out, usually by permitting students to work during their training. Some high schools introduced cosmetology, as the discipline came to be known, into their vocational programs, and teens younger than ever showed up for after-school work in salons. After all of its efforts to raise standards and fight the idea of students working on the floor before they were ready, the industry made these types of concessions only out of desperation. The national worker shortage changed most American service industries from having a customer-first policy to taking a wait-your-turn approach. For example, a salon client who'd been sitting in pin curls unattended for some time might mention to her stylist that it's time to take out the pins, only to be answered with, "Don't you know there's a war going on?" This replaced "Can I help you?" as the battle cry of just about everyone else who dealt with the public. It would prove a hard habit to break. The Tony home perm proved to be a new issue for salons to grapple with. Dismissed by the industry at first since home perms had failed before, the Tony home perm gave women a less expensive, more private alternative to the salon perm. For women who had the patience and knew what they were doing, this generation of home perm was wearable. For those who didn't, and there were plenty, a bad home perm meant a subsequent trip to the salon for corrective work. By the time the industry accepted that the home perm shelf would remain a fixture at the drugstore, the Tony Company and its competitors had spent loads of money on advertising to convince American women that perming their hair would make them beautiful. As it turned out, that wasn't a bad thing at all for the salon industry. Back at the salon. Meanwhile, perm options broadened within the salon industry as well with the development of the cold wave. Just as industry wisdom had miscalculated that the spiral perm would replace the croquignole perm and that the machineless wave would replace both. Now observers too hastily predicted that the cold wave would signal the death of all three of the other methods. By the end of the decade, while cold waving surely had its proponents, the four methods of perming coexisted at the salon. But they were performed a little more quickly. The worker shortage brought unnecessary efficiencies to salon work. With clients clamoring for services from a skeleton staff, the quicker the service, the better. Manufacturers cut the time for perming, hair drying, and tinting, while hairstyling innovators found faster ways to do finger waves, pin curls, and cuts. Quickie facials were introduced, and pointed nails went out of fashion for no reason other than rounding the nail took less time. Women's increased discretionary spending encouraged more salon owners to establish retail departments. At the same time, retail success was thwarted by the lack of staff to attend it. Many salon owners struck a compromise by doing a big Christmas gift display and slacking on retail the rest of the year. Post-war adjustment. The war's end came suddenly when the Allies dropped an atom bomb on 2 Japanese cities in September 1945. But the transition to peacetime, called reconversion, took years. Even by 1947, a Modern Salon editorial made the point that the country had not yet reconverted mentally. That included the salon industry. During the war, salons had become a business of cuts, perms, and wash-and sets. There simply wasn't time to do more, even though the demand for hair tinting and skincare had increased. And there was no need for great service and nice little extras because salons had all the business they could handle. Poorly managed salons went out of business, leaving even more clients for the remaining ones. Competition? What's that? After the war, owners found out. Soldiers returned looking for work, many hopeful of launching businesses with startup funding provided by the GI Bill. Salons opened left and right, some by experienced owners, but many with novices. So many men entered the field that at least one school limited its male enrollment. To stay competitive, owners had to rethink everything: prices, staff training, menu of services, advertising, level of customer service. And that attitude thing the staff developed during the war had to go. Scissors fly. The 1940s entered with a formality. Gone with the Wind in 1939 had given America an appetite for Southern elegance and long ringlets. A secondary influence, the Spanish señorita, further accentuated low curls but introduced width to the sides and sleek brushing on top with a center part. Salons accommodated clients with some complicated longer bob looks and plenty of curls, waves, and rolls. But even before the United States entered the war, European fashion magazines were showing short, tailored bobs with small hats, an obvious impact from female soldiers' uniforms. When it was American women's turn to sign up with the military, the U.S. government required them to cut their hair so that it cleared the collar. That clinched the short hair fashion, further supported by the need to keep hair out of machinery when women worked in factories at home. Even movie star Greta Garbo cut her locks. The art of hair cutting grew in importance as stylists met the demand for the feather cut, the 3-inch bob, the brush cut, the 1940s windswept, the military bob, the fluff top, the side sweep, and the pixie. The shorty took on a number of variations: the jaunty shorty, the little shorty, the campus shorty, the 4-inch shorty, and the updo shorty, just to mention a few. After the war, short hair continued to complement and provide a balance to fashion's high collars, sloping shoulders, plunging necklines, belted waists, narrow hips, and slightly longer skirts. Hair color did not make as much progress. When a hair color pill proved ineffective in fighting gray hair, women turned to tints or just let it go. In wartime Paris, color picked up when hair dyes and peroxide remained in full supply, and women hoped to brighten their lives with pale shades ranging from blonde to light pink. Pinks also surfaced in hairpieces, along with turquoise, white, and black. The industry was poised for change and ready to follow American women down whatever beauty service avenue they would choose. Manufacturing plants and laboratories got back into full swing, offering new products and updated equipment. The industry's various branches made peace and began cooperating in marketing efforts designed to bring more women into the salon. 2 colleges introduced advanced cosmetology programs for summer study. Color television was on the horizon and would create new advertising possibilities, and supplies once again flowed freely. And that was the 1940s. So now we move on in the next video to the 1950s. I hope you join us.